I do not know how can this be construed as an Indian victory because it was a kind of, it's a multilateral event where all heads of government or state are there, and perhaps they were chatting there as three leaders, so nothing earth-shattering about it. I'm surprised the way it is being interpreted in India. I would love to hear from the Indian officials as to what do they think about the summit, about India-China relations, because and then India-US relations as well. Uh, the same, I think, context was there, rather a different context, I would say, to a certain extent, when President Xi and Prime Minister Modi met, I think on the 22nd or 23rd of October last year in Kazan, on the margins of the BRICS summit. So I do not find as to what has really changed between India and China, because since the Kazan summit between the two leaders, things have been slowly, coming back on track. So I find all these things kind of laughable. The way Indian media is projecting the SCO summit itself, and then the meeting between President Xi and Prime Minister Modi. No impact whatsoever, frankly speaking, because our relations with China go back, decades. And it's a very comprehensive strategic partnership. As far as China and India are concerned, they have made a tactical move, which is okay in the context of what Trump has been doing to India. So India is now trying to leverage its reach out to China vis-a-vis the US. Otherwise, I do not see any problem as far as Pakistan is concerned. We have a very deep-rooted, all-weather, as we call it, an all-weather friendship, partnership. So our level of relations with China on a different level, and it would take centuries for India to reach that level, in my view. To a certain extent, yes, India is trying to do that, but the question is, there are inherent limitations in China-India relations. They can go to a certain extent, and it can't be a quick process, in my view, because they have been trying for the last so many years to get to grips with their border disputes, and the mutual mistrust is so deep that it cannot go away with one meeting or two or three meetings for that matter. So I do not see any room, because if you go through this Shanghai Cooperation, this Tianjin Declaration, even there, India is not supporting China's BRI and CPAC. So one can see major chasms or differences between China and India. So there are limitations to this relationship, and unless and until, and even today as we are speaking, there are 50,000 troops on both sides of the LO's line of actual control, eyeball to an eyeball situation. So how can you expect things to get better in a jiffy like this? I'm still very much of the view that it will take decades for the two countries to establish some mutual trust. So China would always like to have a good relationship with India because India is a big market, and and China obviously is a growing, is a rising superpower. There is no doubt about that. And China would like to see India on its side rather than to be having a strategic partnership with the US to counter China's rise. So it does serve China's interest to be seeing differences emerging between Washington, D.C. and New Delhi. That is natural. And China's the way China works, hats off to them that they are, while trying to I would not use the word woo, but trying to keep Modi in good humor. At the same time, they understand that their relations with the US are very, very important. So there, if you see, Trump is all praise for President Xi Jinping. So herein lies the perplexity of international relations. So I think it does serve China's interests. but not to the extent where China compromises its national interests in the sense that no compromise on the line of actual control, no compromise on BRI, and no compromise on its strategic relationship with Pakistan. I think his speech was crisp and comprehensive. He covered almost all the issues which are of matter of concern to Pakistan. For example, he talked about Gaza. He talked about terrorism in Balochistan and a foreign hand, which was obviously he was without mentioning India. He was referring to India, and then he talked about Afghanistan as well. So it was a comprehensive, crisp speech, I would say, and it was a good speech in all respects. Now, I don't see anything to that effect, frankly speaking, because uh, whereas our Prime Minister was very emphatic about state terrorism, and he underscored the importance of stopping state terrorism. And we all know that India will continue its policy of destabilizing Pakistan, whether it is Balochistan or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. On the other hand, though the SCO does have a structure, RATS, regional anti-terrorism structure in Tashkent, but that has not been able to deliver much, frankly speaking. And then we saw just 2 months ago that when uh, SCO issued a statement against Israel for its aggression against Iran, India was the only country which detached itself from the SCO statement. Similarly, it also did not allow uh, a statement to be issued at the end of the defense ministers' meeting, SCO defense ministers' meeting a month ago. So India has its own way of doing things, and I doubt very much that given the obtaining situation, given the mutual mistrust which is there among the states, I do not see as to how long, how far the SCO cooperation on terrorism can really go. No, I mean, if their policy is dictated or the shift is dictated by their national interest, so be it. But they have always been very close to Russia. They have a special strategic partnership with Russia, so nothing new about it. As far as China is concerned, as I said earlier, there are inherent limitations, and I do not see as to how far they can go. They can have trade relations, they can have other cooperation in other areas, but unless and until they are able to settle their border disputes, it will continue to be very difficult. So I do not I'm not really amused by these optics, frankly speaking. They have been meeting it started with Wuhan, the Wuhan spirit evaporated somewhere. Then they met again. Now, I do understand Mr. Trump, President Trump has upended many, many things. And President Trump must be watching, or the US must be watching all these things very closely. At the end of the day, India depends heavily on the US, not only for their economic in their economic matters, but it's also when it comes to their defense equipment as well. And for example, they are in the process of building their light aircraft, combat aircraft, Tejas, and the engines would come from the US, 404 and 414. So without the US, I do not see as to. I mean, to me, this all seems temporary, frankly speaking. The time will come when India would realize that there is a limit to their exploiting or leveraging their relations with Russia and the US. Then also see Russia and Russian president and President Trump also met at Alaska. So they also get along very well. And President uh, Trump would also be visiting China early next year. And he also gets along very well with President Xi. So I do not know how Prime Minister Modi or India can exploit its relations or with Russia or it's trying to reach out to China to leverage President Trump because President Trump is very, very clear as to how to deal with India. And I think the biggest problem for him, personal problem, is that India denied him the important role he played in bringing about the ceasefire between Pakistan and India. I do not know to what extent, but I am sure that China must have conveyed something to the Indian Prime Minister when he met him yesterday and Pakistan's concerns. Because, since Jafar Express train blast and Husdar train blast are also condemned in the SCO declaration. So I'm sure at some stage at certain point, this would have been discussed, but I'm not really very clear as to what extent China can impress upon India when it comes to its irrefutable hand in terrorism in both Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. You know, it is important not to create hype. This summit has come, and now we will have a next summit next year in Bishkek. SCO, in my view, though it's an important organization, but intra-organizational disputes are huge. For example, India-Pakistan hostility, then China-India relations, and there are real problems. And India has been a kind of, in my view, has been the biggest impediment to SCO activities in the past. Now, whether after having been dished by the US for now, I do not know if we can rely on India because India is an odd character in the SCO because on the one hand it wanted to have a strategic partnership with the US. On the other hand, it wanted to have strategic relations with both Russia and to a certain extent China. Now, if President Trump's worldview changes about China, then obviously, and if President Trump does not see President Xi as a long-term adversary, and if they come to terms on different issues, because President Trump does not really believe in multilateralism per se. He's more into establishing, developing bilateral relations. So I'm still not sure that how SCO can really become a very, very effective organization. Though under its umbrella, we have seen many military exercises, some terror-related exercises as well. But to me, SCO has its limitations. And the more it expands, the more unwieldy it will become. So my advice to SCO would be that in order to prevent it from becoming another SARC or ECO for that matter, they need to be very careful and try to, whatever they have at the moment, try to build on that and then go for expansion because, as I said, the more you expand, the more unwieldy you become. And Pakistan definitely would not like the SCO to become another United Nations, which is ineffective in most cases.